Well, hello. Good evening, everyone. Oh man, I am so excited about this event tonight. I hope you are as well. Hey, welcome to Discovery Hour. My name is Kingsley Ekinde. I'm your host, and I'm excited today for many reasons. You know, there is a difference between hearing a man's story and understanding his journey. And tonight, we are not just talking about accomplishments. We are pulling back the curtain to uncover what it really takes to build wealth, to live by faith, and to lead with integrity when no one is clapping yet. I have the honor of sitting with the man I deeply respect, Dr. Martin Quende. His journey spans continents, industries, and seasons both of challenge and clarity, from the hills of Santa to the halls of Silicon Valley, and now building a legacy through financial empowerment. His story isn't just inspiring, it's instructive. So if you're tuning in tonight looking for hype, perhaps this may not be for you. But if you're hungry for truth, for clarity, and for a blueprint that bridges faith, finances, and freedom, then I say lean in. This is going to be a conversation you will want to revisit more than once. And so before I even bring him on the stage, I'd like to play a 5-minute clip or so to highlight perhaps some of his accomplishments, but also what he has currently been building and forging. And you'll see for yourself perhaps why I have him on my show tonight. So hang tight. Let me share this short clip, and then I'll be right back. I want to make sure my
The power of collaboration is where vision meets momentum, turning ideas into impact through the blend of financial and entrepreneurial innovation. In today's rapidly evolving financial landscape, many people make uninformed financial choices simply because they haven't been exposed to better options. When great minds unite, possibilities expand, and what seemed impossible becomes inevitable.
What inspired me to come together with Doc to create Z North was first and foremost, he's fun to work with. He's amazing, and he's just a mastermind. So when you think about what it takes to really build something truly remarkable and truly big, the only person I can think of is Dr. Quende. So, for 15 plus years for myself. So you look at that combined over 30 years combined, we've been working side by side. So it only made sense that we continue that and we combined our teams and collaborate to build something even greater, because a lot of people need help. And, with him and I working together like we always have, it just made sense to continue to really get out there and reach more people.
Zach and I actually have complementary strengths, right? So in building Xenor, Zach is very hands-on. He likes to apply things as soon as he learns them. I am a bit more strategic, right? I think more about vision and how to, build some long-term. So when we have AI ideas, we brainstorm, and then the next day we put it into practice. Then we go back and then we tweak it. For me, I like to think too deep sometimes. With the fact that he goes to just apply the stuff that we'll talk about, makes it easier for us to do more iteration, and we're able to get to a better outcome faster than if I was doing it by myself, or you were doing it by yourself. So we've been very effective for the last 15 years in building out the platform, just because of the way that we work together and really our strengths make that possible.
A dreamer with data, a strategist with a soul. Dr. Martin Muka Quende, a visionary entrepreneur, former Silicon Valley medical devices executive and financial services leader, dedicated to empowering underserved communities. With a PhD in biomedical engineering and an MBA, he combines deep technical expertise with business acumen to drive innovation, financial literacy, and generational wealth creation. As managing partner at Global Impact Accelerator Corporation and field chairperson at WFGIA, he is committed to mentoring leaders, bridging global investment opportunities, and uplifting communities through education, entrepreneurship, and purpose-driven impact. From stadium lights to boardroom nights, he flipped the playbook. Zach Rance, a former Division I athlete turned financial executive. Rising from executive marketing director to senior executive vice chairman at World Financial Group, his story is more than numbers and suits. His journey into finance was driven by a deeper desire for fulfillment, anchored in faith, family, and financial freedom. With a BBA in marketing and an MSc in management, along with extensive experience in management information systems and healthcare recruitment, Zach combines technical insight and business ingenuity to build purpose-driven teams focused on strategic wealth planning and financial literacy, empowering others through compassion, determination, and service. When great minds merge, they birth an innovative financial platform. The goal is to empower people to earn more and live better through financial literacy and insightful choices. Together, we're building a smarter financial future. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Breakthrough 2025. Xenor.
Wow. Okay, let's see here. Oh, there we go. All right, technology. I'm still learning a few things as well. But welcome back. Oh man, I hope you got the picture of who this gentleman is. So I have a lot of questions, so I'm not going to hesitate. I'm not going to delay anymore. I want to bring him on. So please help me welcome my mentor, my big brother, Dr. Martin Quende. Doc, like I love to call you, welcome. Thank you for the opportunity and for accepting my invitation. Thank you. Welcome.
Wow, Kingsley, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here on your show. It's a huge privilege. I get to speak to everybody out there, and I feel truly blessed to be here. Thank you for hosting me.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, Doc, look, I know the audience is can't wait to hear what you have to say, and I'm glad you wanted me not to even tell you how what I'm going to ask you. So I'm glad because then this is going to be highly unscripted. Just know so. I'm the only one who knows the questions I'm about to ask him. He has no clue. So I told him that every now and then I know some of his story, but sometimes there are some things that you need to unpack to help us really understand what's been happening. So I'm going to jump right into it. You know, before we talk about wealth, leadership, or even financial services, I want to go all the way back, Doc. And this is my first question is going to be like threefold, but I'll piece it out and you tell me how you want me to handle it. But the first one is this: what would we see if we visited the younger version of Dr. Quende growing up in Santa? Now, some of you may not know, Santa is a town, a small town in a city called Bamenda. I was born in Bamenda, Cameroon. And so I have an idea about what that area looks like, at least the little memory of Bamenda growing up. But let me have him answer that question for us, because that's just one part. Because the next part I want to ask is this, is that as you think about that, navigate to what shaped the boy before the title.
Okay, that's a very deep question, Kingsley. I grew up as the last of eight siblings in Santa, so I never knew my father, and so my mother was just a single, woman,
Mhm,
farmer, and so my jobs were very simple, right? I basically had to help fetch wood, fetch water, and help my mother in the farm, right?
mhm,
And so that was kind of, so you see me, I probably walking around with no shoes, right?
mhm,
Um, I remember I used to ride on the bamboo. I don't know, anybody here probably doesn't know what that means, but we go on the hill. We didn't have toys, right?
mhm,
So
mhm.
ride on bamboo. So my pants will have like two holes in the back. So I'm riding on the bamboo down the
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have an idea what that could look like. You know, um, so how do you think that boy would respond if he could see the man you've become today?
I doubt that the boy would see that the man was possible, right?
Mm,
I think kind of the challenges that I faced as a child. My mother was very, I mean, obviously I was number eight, right? So she
mhm,
kind of knew how to raise kids. But she even though she goes to the farm, she will make sure that when she comes back, if I don't go to school, sometimes I use the Dutch school. She will actually take me to my teacher's house in the evening just
yes.
to make sure that they keep me on track, right? So it's not like, yes, she was working, but she made sure that I did the things that I was supposed to do, and she emphasized the importance of going to school because she said that was the only way out, right? And she said
Mhm,
we didn't have any magic, we just had prayers. So she
mm,
also emphasized that I have to go to church. So she dragged me to church and she pushed me
mhm.
to go to school. And those two things over time kind of shaped the person that I am today.
Okay, wonderful. So let me ask you this: were there some beliefs you grew up with about money, success, or identity that you later had to unlearn?
Yeah, I grew up in essence, because I didn't have much. I cried a lot, right? Because I didn't have anyone to ask stuff from. I knew my mother really didn't have, so I couldn't like be, asking her for stuff I knew she didn't have. So if I needed something, I just kind of cried, right? Which is
Mhm,
part of why I don't cry anymore. No matter what happens right now, I don't cry because I did all the crying when I was a child, right?
mm,
And when it comes to money, I felt like it wasn't something that was common to have because I didn't really see much money growing up. Actually, at some point, I had uncles that were very wealthy, very
mhm,
successful. So I would see them bring, nice, beautiful cars, their kids were well dressed. right?
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of knew there was something out there. I just
Mm-hmm.
knew that, I didn't have it yet. But I was confident that at some point, if I did what my mother was telling me, it was going to happen. So I was very confident about my future, even though I didn't really know too much, but at least I saw some wealth with my uncles, that were around me from time to time.
Doc, you said something that caught my attention, which you've never said. I want us to peel that onions a little bit. You said you cried a lot. Hmm. Tell me one moment where maybe perhaps something really happened that really led you to that place where you just broke down and you just started crying. What was going through your mind? But maybe just give us a little bit what the issue was and what was happening at the time, what you can recall, what's going on in your mind and in your heart emotionally.
It's funny because it wasn't like very much, right? I remember
Mhm.
at some point I just needed like a hat,
Mm,
and I couldn't get it.
mm,
And I was like, hey, I told my mother I wanted to have a hat. That's just a simple hat, nothing crazy.
mhm,
And she couldn't afford it.
mm.
Right. So I was like, I kind of cried about it. And
Yeah.
it was just little stuff, nothing,
Yeah.
I never really wanted anything crazy growing up at all, really.
Mhm. Yeah, but I think it had an impact because if you think about it, it was something you desired, and perhaps you say that little now, but maybe then it was something significant to you, and you could it be that you found yourself in a position you're like, wow, why can't I have this thing that I feel like it's common to have?
Kingsley, I grew up a long time ago, right? So when I grew up, I've never had a toy. I mean, like seriously, I know some of
Mm,
my kids don't even get it. I never had a toy bought
mhm,
for me. We made
mm,
our own toys,
mhm,
right? So
mhm,
something like a hat, a cap or hat was just something that looked like a toy, something that I would desire. So I was good at making my own little stuff.
okay.
But from time to time, you kind of want something,
Mhm,
that looks a bit different, right? So
yeah.
think about the child growing up in the US right now and never getting a toy, just a simple toy.
Mhm,
I can't remember ever having a toy, any toy whatsoever.
mm. Wow. Hmm. I'll hold on to that thought. This brings me to this question. Was there ever a point where you caught a glimpse of the kind of impact you wanted to make, or did that vision come later?
That's a tough question. I when I was a child, I was really just hoping that I could get somewhere, right? So
Mhm,
when I was not serious with school to start with because I really didn't understand, right? So when I went, I remember when I was like maybe 6 years old, I'm not sure exactly. I
mhm,
would walk to school with all the other kids every morning.
mhm,
So like the first semester or first term was 3 months. I only arrived school for 1 month out of three. But every morning I wake up and I dress up and I follow all the other kids to school, but I never went to the school.
mm,
And I'll dodge with a couple of friends,
mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Because it was like, hey, we go around, we play, we hunt for birds, right?
Mhm,
I mean, we're not stealing bananas, but we were not harvesting bananas and pears, and we bury them. And then
mhm,
every time we go back, we go check where we bury them. When they're good, then we eat. And then when everybody's coming back, we know exactly what time they come back. We walk with them back home.
mhm. Wow. 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 Huh. Okay. Let's switch gears a little bit. Now I want to bring it to your immigrant experience. And the first question I have here is, what did your early years in the US teach you, perhaps about yourself and the system you were entering?
So before I talk about the US, I did not go to school in the US to start with, right? I had a
Mm,
scholarship to study in England. And I had a
mhm,
scholarship to study physics with electronics, no, physics with math. And the idea from back in Cameroon was that I was supposed to go back and teach,
mhm,
right? So when I went to England, I was like, in fact, let me just step back. My other brother is a medical doctor. He paid for me through school, through secondary school. And
mhm,
he wanted me to do medicine because he's a medical doctor, right? And I
Okay.
was feeling like, medicine was really not for me. But I knew I could pass it because I was pretty smart in school. So
Mm-hmm.
I had to find a way to tell him I didn't want to do medicine. So I told him that, I felt like medicine was a calling.
Mm-hmm.
And I was listening, they never called my name. So I couldn't do it. So he kind of let me off the hook, right? So I went and studied physics with math, and then I morphed into physical electronics.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I had a PhD in biomedical engineering. So I kind of moved across, all the way. So when I
Mm-hmm.
came to the US, I already had the job. I worked in Europe for like 2 years before I
Mm-hmm.
came, to the US.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also already had a green card. So when I came to US, that was actually pretty easy for me, right? Because my
Mm-hmm.
company moved me from Europe. They gave me a home. They gave me a car. So my entry in the US was really, really, exciting. Yeah, I didn't really have any issues when I got to the US. Europe was really where I had some challenges. When I came to US, though, I had to basically restart my job because the company
Mm-hmm.
was offering me a job in Minnesota, and I went there in November. I didn't like the weather at all, so I
Yeah.
decided essentially to restart my career.
Mm.
Right, so took a job in San Diego because it was really beautiful with
Mm.
my former boss,
Okay.
and I had to basically start like almost from zero in terms
Yeah.
of income.
Yes.
And then I was doing something very different. So I told myself, hey, I want to learn something different, right? So I decided to restart when I came to the US, and I took a different job in a different field. It was in the
Yeah.
medical field, but different type of device.
Mm-hmm.
And I started again from zero, and I started building.
Okay. Wow. So tell me this, Doc. As an immigrant, what were your biggest internal battles that you faced around belonging, success, and identity?
You probably don't believe this, right? You know
Mhm.
how people feel like they get discriminated against? I have never felt that. You know why? Because growing up, I knew something very important, and I told myself this. I said, I know that I'm a little bit disadvantaged,
Mhm.
so I have to come in better just to be the
Mhm.
same, right? So I told myself, if I go to a job interview, I have to show up better just to measure the same. If
Mhm.
I go to work, I have to perform way better just to be the same. And I also understood that anyone that has a company is more interested in who can give them more value. And
Mhm.
if I could focus on bringing more value, I'll always get the job. So that's what I developed. And for me, I've never had issues having a job, whether in Europe or in the US, because of the
Mhm.
mindset that I developed very early. I'm like, I have to show up better just to be the same. I still do
Mhm.
that even right now.
Yes, I can attest to that for sure. Hmm. Wow. How about this? Sometimes some of us have come here and perhaps, whoever brought you was already doing successful. And sometimes they begin to coach you or coerce you even to walk in their path. In some instances, you come and they start telling you, go do a specific kind of task or go into a specific field because their perception is that that's the field where you can make money, you can do well, right? So, did you ever feel like you were chasing someone else's version of success before you defined your own?
Actually, not. It's kind of funny. So when I went to college, I wanted to do I called it medical physics at the time, right? Because I didn't want to do medicine, but I still
Hmm.
wanted to be in the medical space. So I ended up doing physical electronics, which
Hmm.
was actually more difficult than physics in itself. So
Mm.
in my second year, we were like 5 people in the class. In my final year, I was the only one in class because everybody else went back to physics, right? So I've always tried to be a trailblazer, right?
Oh man.
Partly because growing up, I was pretty smart at school. So I always kind of wanted to show that I could do a little bit more. So I
Hmm.
always wanted to be leading rather than following. So I've
Mm.
never really, especially think about it, if my older brother is a medical doctor and I refuse to do medicine,
Hmm.
then who else would I want to be following? Right? Because
Mm.
that's something that I would believe in. Makes sense? But I
Yeah.
wanted to blaze my own trail. I'm like, I have to go do something uniquely different. So I've always kind of had that mindset, even from, a long time ago.
Wow. Okay. So now, Doc, hmm, you reached what many would call the top in your career. What made you walk away?
Well, so this was the second time, like I said, when I came to the US, I had to restart, right?
Hmm.
And then I worked my way back up to the top in the medical field. I work in Silicon Valley, right? I used to make things to put in people, brain simulators, pacemaker stents, balloon catheters, and also at the executive level. And I made good money, right? My wife's a registered nurse with a master's in nursing. She too was doing great. So we made $500,000 a year in income. And we led a pretty good life. We were hanging out with the executives, traveling, living in exclusive hotels. So life was pretty good. But when I really thought about it, and I was like, well, the things that are important to me, the time that I want to spend with my kids, all of a sudden I couldn't spend that time anymore.
Hmm.
And you've heard my story before. I said I used to walk to school without shoes, and I made a commitment as a child that if I have money, I'm going to buy a lot of shoes, right? So
Hmm.
all of a sudden, trying to buy these shoes, trying to give my kids an experience uniquely for them, the money was not adding up anymore.
Mm.
And I didn't have control of my time. And I'm asking myself, if I feel like I'm very accomplished, I work for over 20 years of experience, I have a PhD, I have an MBA. If I can't control my time and my money, something
Mm.
is not right. Also,
Mm.
the things that I made, if I made a brain simulator, for example, it costs like 25 grand. I'm thinking to myself, the people that I really care about cannot afford what I'm making. So I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm really not making the impact that I like to make in my community. That's what made me kind of rethink what I was doing. And I was like, okay, I have to be open minded. So I tried a few things, right?
Mhm.
Until I got to the point where I saw something that I thought could make a difference. And as soon as I saw that, boom, I took time to study it. I didn't just jump into it. I took some time to study.
Mhm.
And I studied this for like 4 years. And once I understood it, I jumped. And I've never looked back ever since.
Wow. 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 Huh. That's powerful, Doc. That's powerful because every now and then when you share that story, I still, I still ask myself, how in the world did you come to that conclusion to say, you know what, I'm leaving all this behind? But sometimes it takes God's grace, it takes faith. You know. And speaking of faith, my next question is this: did you ever feel like you had tension between your faith and your profession during those years when you were, in your career and at that top? Because, sometimes in corporate America can be a can be a bloodbath, and I don't know.
No, honestly, I think that I work for very ethical companies, right? And this is the point though. When I work in the medical field, medical device field, it's an area where you put things in people,
Hmm.
right? And if
Yeah.
you think about it, if I introduce a foreign object into somebody,
Hmm.
the body reacts to basically take that object out.
Yep.
So just the concept of putting a foreign object into somebody's body is a
Hmm.
whole process in itself,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
then when you make a medical device, let's say make a pacemaker, like unlike a computer where you make a computer and all 5% of them fail, like no big deal, go take another one.
Yeah.
If you kill one patient, the family cannot take another one. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? So
Yeah.
my mindset in my job was that nothing has to fail
Mm.
because one death can destroy an entire family. So
Hmm.
my mindset has always been like zero failure,
Got to.
right?
Yep. That's
So
true.
yeah, so when I saw the concept of hey, no family left behind, for example, it
Hmm.
made sense to me because like that's how I normally think in my engineering career.
Mm. Yep.
So
That's
I've
true.
never really had conflict with my faith and what I
Hmm.
do.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's true. That's good. That's good, Doc. Because um, you know, the reason why I asked that question is because um, when I was in a particular company at the time, I had one of my colleagues. He was a mentor to me, and this guy had been a manager before, and some things happened, and he got demoted. And I remember one time, yeah, my young engineer, very aspirational, looking forward to do some things. And he pulled me to the side one time and he told me, he said, Kingsley, I see that you're strong. You think clearly. You're very meticulous and very detailed about how you approach things. And then he pulled me asking that, so are you thinking about going into management or do you just want to stay technical? And and when he asked me that question, here's a guy who has been in both sides, right? So when he asked me that question, I could tell that okay, I'm not sure what his response was going to be. And number one, he is a Caucasian guy asking me this. So I'm thinking threefold now. Okay, is there some bias, some prejudice coming into the scene, or what is this? But the bias part never came across because the relationship I had built with him over the years before that time proved to me that this was someone that did not regard me like that or would not tolerate those kinds of behaviors. So um, when he asked me that now, I told him that, well, I think I would like to go into management. And he asked me why. I said, well, I feel like at some point when you, in fact, at the time, I just feel like it should be a natural progression that as you move, maybe if you're in a technical field, at some point you want to start managing people. And he began explaining to me that those are different skill sets. But then he said something so profound to me. He said, I need you to understand this, that if you're going to go to management, you must go past middle management. And I asked him why. He said, because, in fact, he said, you are the sandwich. He said, he said, that's where the devil exists. He said,
That's
because
interesting.
he said, so if you're going to go there, you must make sure you go beyond that. Otherwise, you will sell your soul. Right. And because of what he said, he told me that that's why now, as an individual contributor, he is totally happy with where he's at, and he has no desire to go back into management. Something that stuck with me till today. And so it prompted me to ask you that question because I've also seen and worked with other managers, and sometimes you see the challenges, the dilemmas that they have sometimes in making decisions where it could be conflicting even to their own moral compass, right? And so that's where I was coming from because it takes a lot to get to that place without
Well,
encountering.
I, it's interesting you say that because when I think about it, right, the truth is that once I understood business,
Mhm.
then I didn't make it personal. That's the issue that most people have at the job because they're being emotional about something that is non-emotional, right?
Mm,
So I remember an incident in my job where
mm,
one of my colleagues, she was a vice president, she's like, "How come we never see you mad? Like you never show any, you know,
mhm.
emotion, nothing." I'm like, "Well," I said, "I read my contract thoroughly, and I didn't see anywhere that it said I get paid for getting mad. So guess what? You never see me mad." I said, if you want to
Man,
see me mad, you have to come to my house. But here, you will never see me mad. So that's why
mm.
most of you probably never see me mad. It's very rare for me to get
It
mad
is, it
because
is, it
I don't
is.
get paid for that.
It is, man. I wish I could have just maybe one quarter of that demeanor because I read some of the recommendations on your LinkedIn page and what you're saying. Your some of your colleagues attest to that. They're like they've never seen you mad. It's like this guy is always calm. I'm like man, So man, doc, that's a great lesson because you just said something that you did not make it personal, and I think that's a key statement right there, that you have to be able to separate that, and it can only happen because of your understanding of what business is or what it should be about, right? um, and I think if I were to pivot now, yes, what I want to ask you, what was the scariest part of transitioning into the financial services? And then the second part to that question is this: what doubts did you wrestle with the most?
Wow. Honestly I had a lot of challenges, right? So, in fact, when I think about it, Kingsley, I think about backwards. There's really no justification for how I got into financial industry. So I told you that I studied the industry for 4 years from 2010 to
Mhm,
2014, 2013.
mhm,
And then at that point, I had made $28,000 in the financial industry. And
mhm,
in that year, and I made a decision to go full time. And I walked away. No, at first I told my wife to quit her job as a nurse because I said she has to take care of the kids. I'm shocked she accepted to do it because I had to write a resignation for her.
mhm,
And then 1 month after, I quit my job myself, and she was kind of like, "You're crazy." I was
mhm,
like, "Well, these guys have promised me that if I do this for 5 years full time, I already work for 20 years. I said, they said if I work 4 years, 5 times full time, 5 years full time, we'll be financially free for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
So I told her I'm willing to give that a shot. Right. So that decision basically put me at odds with my entire family. Potentially, maybe there were 2, 3 people that believed in me still, and all of my friends, almost. There were
Yeah.
probably 2 friends that stuck with me. The rest, like seriously, think about it, Kingsley. You grew up from wearing no shoes, right? You walk your way up to working in Silicon Valley. Everybody in the community is looking up to you. Your family is going like, man, we have someone that is successful. And then you casually walk away from that to go do something that nobody can understand. It didn't make any sense. Even right now, I think about it, I have to confess very publicly that it truly wasn't of my making. I believe that God had a hand in making that possible. Because the thing, it doesn't even make any sense, even now that I think about it. I live in Silicon Valley. I have 3 kids. My wife, very beautiful, likes good things, right? And then I put her in very serious situation. Someday you probably need to bring her an interview here.
I think I will.
Yeah, because I remember she tells me these things. I listen to her sometimes. I cry for her, but the truth is that I cried when this was going on. Every night I would sit beside her. I wake her up and we pray. I read the Bible and we pray about it. When we go to church, when they turn the lights out, I will cry. When the lights come on, I'll be normal again. Yeah, I had friends that would kind of ask me like, "Oh, I hear you're struggling," just to mug me because they didn't offer anything to help. But I was like, "Hey, I'm on a journey. I'm going to go to the end of this journey and see what happens." Right? I already had a doctorate degree, had experience. So I'm like, if it's a question of going to work, I can work, but I have to give this a shot. Why? Because growing up the way I grew up, I did not want my kids to have the same experience that I had in any way. Right? So I'm like, if I have an opportunity to make a difference, I have to do that. And I also thought about other kids too. Right? If somebody came after me, I wanted them to have better than I had.
Yeah.
And so I saw something that looked like an opportunity to empower the community. I'm like, I'm going to give this the best shot that I can. And this is part of why, even when I went through a lot of challenges, I couldn't quit. It's like, quit to what?
Yeah, because that's why I mean, I hear you what you're saying. You started the business for 4 years before you made that tough decision to go all in. I get that part. But even when you made that decision, and like you said again, I have to give you that because, like you said now, when you think about it, it probably even scares you also, like that decision you made then, right? So it really had to be God's providence that somehow you just had that courage to do that, because I I don't know that many people. I haven't come across anyone who has jumped the way you did, to the point where you had your wife quit her job, and then you followed suit without quite knowing how income is gonna continue flowing in, right? So it's something that is so profound, and yet sometimes uh, it's one of those ways that sometimes God deals with us, such that we can't even take credit for what happened. So I'll leave it at that, because that for me, yeah, that is a big one. Well, I have questions, Doc. I have questions. uh, when did it finally click that this was more than a job, that it was your assignment?
You know what? I know that I lived once, right? So one of the things that I've lived in multiple cities, right? So I grew up in Santa, then I went to school in Liverpool University, then I worked in Holland, then I lived in San Diego, then I went to Santa Rosa, then I came to Silicon Valley. My point is, every time people ask me, so what's the best city you lived in? I tell them there's no best city I live in. Every city I live in, I do my best to enjoy it. Then when I walk away, that's it. So there's no best city. Does that make sense? So my point is, I believe that I have to do everything I'm supposed to do now, right? Because I might not have the chance to do it again. So I'm going to do the most that I can with what I have. So I normally really don't, pay too much time worrying about stuff like that. It's like, hey, if I have to do something, I'm going to do it. So when does it feel like a calling? At some point, once I wrote down the vision, right, that I want to make a difference in my community, and I read the book Think and Grow Rich, and he said you have to say that again and say that again and say that again. Once I believed it, that was it. I was like, this has to happen. And I was of a singular mind. I'm like, okay, I know I've been successful before by just doing what I'm supposed to do. And I have guides, right? Zach, my offline, was helping me. Eric was also helping me. So I'm like, I have people that are going to guide me. If I do everything that I do, I know everything is going to work out. In fact, this is one of the tenets that I hold very dear to me right now, which is once I understood growing up that there was a Heavenly Father, and all that I needed to do was to do my best, and then he would do the rest. That changed my perspective significantly. That's something I hold up to today, right? I always say that things are always going to work out regardless, right? So no matter what happens, things will always work out. In fact, Kingsley, I learned a lot from my pastor, right? Lady said something very, very powerful. He said that this life is like you and I are on the plane, right? When we sit on the plane, going, say, from Dallas to Miami, you and I don't pilot the plane, right? You can choose to sleep. You can choose to go to the restroom. You can choose to chat with someone, but guess what? You are not controlling the plane. If there's, turbulence, you're going to experience it. Make sense? So life is kind of like that. No matter what we think, at some point, for example, all of us are going to die, whether I like it or not. Whether I believe in death or not is going to happen. Why? Because there's somebody that's determined where we're going. Right?
Yeah.
So we have freedom to choose what we do while we're on that plane. But that's it. You cannot ask for any special food. You can only eat food that's on the plane. Right? Right. Yeah. Once you understand your limitations, you look at life very different.
Yeah. I'll come back to that because you said something there that stuck with me. Yes, my follow-up question. Were there ever opportunities that promised you success but would have cost you your integrity?
I mean, there are always things like that, right? I tried all kinds of stuff. I tried, different businesses. But the truth is that my faith always trumped everything that I did, right? Partly because growing up very broke, I had to depend on faith a lot. And because it was working for me, I didn't have any reason to believe in other stuff. My grandmother used to tell me that we did not have any magic, nothing. We just had prayer. Does that make sense? And so over time, my faith became very strong. So I really didn't have to worry too much about other stuff, right? I knew that if I worked hard and I went through some challenges, then good things are going to happen. So I never really had to try some crazy stuff really seriously.
Okay. So talking about faith, how has your faith shaped your definition of wealth and legacy?
Kingsley, I used to think that faith was just a feeling or a belief, because when I ask people what's faith, they'll be like believing in something you don't see. Then I learned that that's not even true. Faith is a process, right? And that process has 6 steps. And this is biblical, by the way, right? And I'm going to go through real quick the 6 steps of faith. The first step of faith, if you want something to happen, the first step is that you have to dream about it. If you don't dream about something, nothing will ever happen for you. You have to dream it first. That's step number 1. But the second step, you have to decide that you want that dream to come true. Right? So you dream and then you make a decision. Guess what? Most people get stuck at step number 2. They can't even decide what they want. But once you decide, there's going to be a delay. Why? Because everything takes a process. If you're going to plant corn, it's going to take a while. If you're going to have a baby, it's going to take a while, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing that happens instantly. Maybe even microwave doesn't happen instantly. You must have cooked the food first, okay? I can warm corn in microwave for 2 minutes, but if I cook corn in microwave, it's going to take at least 7 to 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Right? So there's going to be a delay. But in that delay, you're going to have to encounter some difficulty. Part of that difficulty is essential to shift your thinking. Right? So in the difficulty, you're going to get to the fifth step. It's called dead end. Now, guess what most people do when they get to a dead end? So you believe, oh my goodness, I'm going to make this money. I'm going to be successful. They get to a dead end. Boom. Guess what most people do? They quit. Right? And I'm like, okay. So God can only do miracles at the dead end. But it only works if you understand how God, the process of how things happen. Does that make sense? So when you're in the process of faith, you get to a dead end, which all of us are going to get to. Most people that don't understand are going to quit. Now, if you listen very carefully, I know you're very strong with the Bible. When they came and told Jesus that Lazarus was sick, what did he say? I'm not ready.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Because if he went and healed Lazarus, they'd be like, he just got well.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, he waited for him to be dead and be buried and put in the tomb and started to smell before he came. So they knew for sure it was dead. That was like the dead end. Make sense? When they told Jesus at the party that, oh, the wine is finished, there was no Walmart. Okay. You had to make You had to make the wine, and making wine takes time. So they said the wine is finished. That's a huge embarrassment to your guests. Right? So once you get to that dead end, that's the only time that miracles are going to happen. Right? But you have to stay there.
Yeah.
You have to stay there. So after that, guess what? God steps in and then boom, you're going to have deliverance. Right? So in my journey in the financial industry, I was lucky that when I get into the dead and the valley of despair, I did not move. In fact, I remember when things were really, really tough in 2016, and I haven't even talked about the journey, but I started full-time 2014, 2016, things were really tough. My wife is like, hey, you have to go back to work, or at least you can do some consulting, because I had very good experience. And I told her, I said, no, this guy's told me 5 years full-time. I've done 3 years. I have to finish the 2, because I have to know if it works or not. Right? So she went to church. It's kind of a funny story, but it's not. So she went to church and she offered a prayer request for them to pray for me to quit. But I stayed in that valley of despair. I had to sell my home just to pay my kids' fees. I want to live in an apartment. Right? I bought a car to send back home. I couldn't even send the car back home. I had a car that somebody broke the windscreen. I could not fix it for a good amount of time. One of my cars was sitting for almost a year. I could not repair it. And it only cost like $4,000 to fix it because I didn't have any money. But I was paying the office rent, but I was struggling to pay my mortgage at some point. Right? Because I believe that if I went through that process like they promised me, then I'll know for sure if it actually worked or not. And guess what? From 2017, things started to work out. Honestly, I can't even tell what happened, but I just saw things changing. And from that point to now, it's constantly gone better and better and better.
Wow. Doc, I want to pause for a little bit because I know we started and we talked about quite a few things. I showed a video. Maybe the video helped people to get a little bit of background about what you do. What is it? What kind of business exactly you're in? But I want to pause for a little bit and give you an opportunity to just describe for those who could be watching, so they kind of have an idea what exactly it is that you do, what kind of business you're in, before we continue, please.
Okay. I focus on 2 things mainly. The first thing I focus on is called financial empowerment. I have to help my community learn how to create wealth. Okay. This is something that you and I don't learn in school. And I kind of fell into it by mistake. And I told myself, I'm going to make a commitment to share that with my community. So I teach people how to become wealthy. That's the one thing that I do. And it's 5 simple steps. Step number 1 is that you have to learn how to make income first, right? So you go get a skill, you get a degree, pharmacy, MD, whatever. That's a tool that you use to make income. The only issue is that there are 2 types of income. One is called what? Working income, which means you trade time for money. That's like your job, right? The truth is that you cannot work more than 16 hours a day typically. So the income is limited. But the second type of income is called residual income, which means you're leveraging other people's time or other people's money, which means you own like a business, right? So people need to know the difference. Most people only have what? Working income, but they don't have the other income. So that's step number 1. You have to make income. Number 2, you have to make enough income to live your lifestyle and then to save some money, right? Then once you save money, the third step, you'll be able to what? To invest the money to grow it. You can buy real estate, stocks, whatever you want to do, right? But that money needs to grow. Why? Because if you think about it, I have a bottle of water in my hand right here, right? If this bottle of water costs $1 this year, and I save $1 in the bank, but 1 year from now, this bottle of water costs $1.10, but my $1 in the bank has already grown to $1.05. Can I buy the same bottle of water? No. So to maintain your buying power, you need to grow your money the same way as things go expensive. It's called inflation. So you have to understand that, right? So that's the one thing that people don't understand. So when you're trying to grow your money, some things like that are going to happen. You're going to get taxed. You know, the market goes up and down. So you have to understand those challenges that you face when you try to build wealth, so you know how to circumvent them, right? Once you do those steps, that's the protection step. That's number 4. Then the 5th step, once you have wealth, you learn to be able to pass it on, right? So for someone like me, I never had a father. So guess what? He passed me absolutely nothing. My mother died in a car accident when I was 16 years old. She was still broke, so she didn't give me anything, right? But that 5th step is very important. How do you pass on what you work for to your next of kin, right? And these are the basic things that most of us don't really know. So that's the first part of the business that I do, empowering our community with the basic financial knowledge that we don't learn in school, okay? And then giving them the tools to make the difference. That's number 1. But number 2 thing that I focus on is entrepreneurial empowerment, right? Most companies are the people that employ everyone, right? Right now, you will have a job from a company. But if you go to Africa, you try to start a company, the cost of capital is so expensive that it's almost impossible to start a business in Africa. And we say that, oh, we have resources, but if you have natural resources but no capital, nothing is happening. So one of the things that I'm embarking on is making sure that we can generate capital and also create mentoring platforms to help the African community learn how to develop the resources that we have very naturally, right? And be able to create wealth that way. But that kind of wealth is actually what focusing on making impact. Kingsley, think about getting to a point where every young person in Africa is confident that they can have work in that environment and they have no need to leave the continent and be dying in the desert or in the water somewhere. That's the focus that I have. Number 2 is to make sure that would never need to happen for any child going forward.
Yeah. No, thank you, Doc. Thank you, Doc. And just to recap, so those who are listening in can remember, but when Doc talked about faith and he said that faith is a process, he gave us the 6 D's. He said dream, decide, delay, difficulty, dead end, and deliverance. So very powerful. All those steps, we have to take that into account, you know. Out of the blue, Doc, what biblical truth or scripture anchored you during seasons of uncertainty? Is there a scripture that, man, every now and then, I have mine, I have like 2 or 3. I'm just curious, you know, is there one that really resonated with you so much that over the years, you know, you've always come back to that? It was maybe that foundational scripture that you held on to.
There's this particular scripture, I always talked about it, like I always had to recite it at Christmas time, right? And I kind of love it because it gives me hope always. And it's John 3 verse 16, I believe, right? I know it's a common one, but that's the one that is with me always. And it says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believeth in him shall not perish, but shall have everlasting life." Right? And I kind of, when I read the Bible, I kind of watch what Jesus had to go through. Even though he's the Son of God, he still had to go through the same faith process that I just told him. Right? he had to get to a dead end when they said, okay, this is the time. And he tells his father, he's like, hey, God, can you take this cup away from me?
Yeah.
Right?
Mm.
And then
Yeah.
he kind of confesses at the end, but let your will be done.
Yeah.
So with that understanding, I'm like, okay, if the Son of God has to still go through the same faith process, then
Hmm.
at least I know what my future can look like if I follow the exact same process.
Yeah. Yeah. No, makes sense. Wow, Doc. So I know we're staying more on the faith and stuff like that. We're going to pivot soon. Was there ever a time when God closed a door you so desperately wanted open? Because here's something I've learned over the years in my own spiritual walk and experience. And I remember one time I was listening to a preacher I listened to often. And he said something one time. This was, man, it's been like 15 years ago, but it has stuck with me since. And I always try to remember and remind myself of that because it's one of my, I'll call it guiding principles. And the way he put it was this: he said, it is a dangerous thing to be killing what God may want to stay alive, or to try to keep alive what God is killing.
That's deep. I'm going to give you a scenario, right? Because
Mm,
I call them God moments in
mm,
essence, right?
yeah,
And I
yeah,
have several of those, but I'm going to give you one very particular one. So
yeah.
when I was finishing primary school, because I had nobody to pay for my fees, right? So I knew I had to, in Cameroon, you could get like a free school through the government system.
Hmm.
So we have to pass, at a high level. So I did.
Well,
And
back
then,
then in your time, not now, but back then
you
in
know,
your
that's a while back, right? So I did. So I went with my older brother, who was a professor at university, and I was supposed to stay with him and go to that school. So I went for the interview, or he went before me. He went. I didn't go. He went and
Mm,
he inquired about me going to the school, and they told him that he had to pay back. So think about it. For me, my only option out was school at this point. So my brother goes to that school, and they tell him that he has to bribe them, and he's like, no. He said, if this school is free for people
mhm,
that are smart, this particular individual is the one that has to go there for free. There's absolutely no way I'm going to pay you for someone that actually qualifies to do it, right?
mhm,
You know what? He came and he told me, he said, you are not going to secondary school.
mm,
I'm one of the best students in school. That's my only option out is school. And the one person that I believe that can help me says that because they want him to pay bribe, he believes that I should not pay bribe for something that I deserve. He said, I'm not going to do it. And I knew he meant it. I was like, oh my goodness. But then I thought back, I said, well, in my entire life, I always told myself that if I do my best, God will do the rest. So I'm
mm,
like, hey, it's all good. I've done everything I'm supposed to do.
mhm,
So whatever happens is going to happen. So guess what happened? My other older brother that was in Nigeria actually opted to pay for me to go to a private school,
mm,
one of the best private schools in the country. So one brother says you cannot go to school for free because I don't want to pay bribe one time, but another
mhm,
brother has to pay for 5 years, actually 7 years, for me to go to the best school,
mm,
right? So I'm
mhm,
just saying, God closed that door for me to go to a free school
mhm,
so I can go to the best school.
mm,
But at the
mm.
time that he did, I couldn't really tell. So there are
Yeah,
things like that. So many in my life that at some point
yeah,
I was like, hey, now I
mhm,
understand when he shuts a door, I don't push.
yeah, yeah. And it's just like what Steve Jobs once said, right? That it's hard to connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect the dots looking backwards. So
Yeah,
now that you've gone through that experience, you look back now, you're like, oh, I see why this happened. You see
exactly.
why
Exactly.
things went that way or that way, and you all of a sudden you start seeing the hand of God upon your life in those many instances and how he was helping you to navigate, even when you made the wrong turn, but he still helped to redirect you and bring you to a place where, I'll call it your wealthy place. So wonderful. Let me ask you this one. This one, Doc. What role would you say your spiritual discipline play in your biggest breakthroughs? Because again, for a lot of folks, you know, um, for a lot of people, right now we're seeing your harvest, and we're not seeing the doing, or we don't see it. We were not. A lot of us were not part of the doing part, let alone part of the being part, right? and and it's something that we've talked about. Your business partner and a dear mentor as well to me, Honorable Dr. Rance, always used to say, "Be, do, have," and he emphasized on the being part. And took me a few months to for that to click, and because a lot of us focus on the having, right? But we are called human beings, not human havings. If we can be and become, the having never comes to pass. And for me, this is something that I have gotten a glimpse of these things when you speak and you talk about some things with me and maybe to a crowd. And I feel like sometimes, a lot of time, we miss it because, again, either we become so callous, or we are not very aware of what's happening. And partly too is because you talk about it so casually, Doc. Okay. You talk about it so casually, as if this is just a day to day thing, but it is day to day for you now. But it took some growing up, some becoming, right? I'd like you to touch on that, because what we see now, there is something that happened. Perhaps those first 4 years of you really looking at this business opportunity, that today you're reaping the harvest. But also, it wasn't only the 4 years. I think even your time in corporate America and beyond. However, I think there was a specific time when maybe the intensity of what you did was so high, right? Because um, if we think about seed germination, even Jesus said, "Except a seed falls to the ground and dies, it abides alone." There has to come a point where the seed must crack open to shed life, but it takes a lot, because the seed, number one, is underground. Nothing sees it. So it's in an environment where it's completely hidden, it's obscure, right? But not only that, it's damp, it can be hot. So the environment is not necessarily conducive in terms of how the seed might feel if it had a mouth to speak. But it was still the necessary environment for it to bring new life. Tell me a little bit about that for you.
Well, um, one of the most challenging times that I faced, frankly, apart from growing up, was when I decided to quit my career to go do, the financial stuff that I do right now. Uh, because I was already established, everybody's
Mhm.
looking up to me. It's like, oh, this guy's an example of success, right?
Yeah,
I had
yeah.
this fake friends that like me just because of what I did that I did not know, right?
Mhm.
So when I decided I was going to go start from zero, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, those friendships just evaporated,
Mm.
right? It almost like they found a way to mock, like to just mock, like, oh, you thought you were all that, now see where you are, correct?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, so I had my wife, I love her and I wanted to make sure that she experienced a different lifestyle,
Mhm.
but I essentially put her in a very challenging situation. In fact, she used to tell a story where she would go to the mall to shop and she wasn't sure that the credit card was going to go through. So she picks stuff, put them in the basket, she goes to the queue to check out. And as soon as someone comes behind her, she goes behind the person because she
Mhm.
wants to be the last in line,
Mhm.
just not to get embarrassed. That makes sense.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I put that on her by the decisions that I made.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I always would do was that every night before she sleeps, even she was sleeping when I came back, I'll wake her up and we'll read the passage in the Bible and then we'll pray.
Mm.
Every morning we'll do that, right? And when we go to church, when they put out the lights, I will pray, and then I'll cry a little bit. When the lights come out, I'll be normal again, right? But she could notice a lot of this.
Yeah.
And we prayed together, and we like put everything, to God. And over time, it gave us a lot of peace, even when things didn't look like they were working. In fact, we had a lot of business partners that would come to our home. They would never suspect that anything was wrong, ever.
Mm.
Our kids never sensed absolutely anything, right?
Mm.
Because we so believed in where we're going, even though we're challenged, we're facing difficulties,
Mhm.
that we would constantly just pray and expect that God's going to do what He's going to do. But also, I had to wake up every day and find something to do.
Mm.
Because I went full time. So guess what? Every morning I wake up, I would go somewhere. I'll find a place to go just to stay busy, right? I would talk to someone, do something, knowing that that is either going to grow me or it's going to give me an opening,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how, in my mind, I stayed in the valley of despair, but I developed my faith, right? And I basically became mentally tough, and I kept doing the things that I'm supposed to do. I kept doing the things I'm supposed to do. So I was growing without even knowing it. In fact, if you watch, I have a graph that I created
Mhm.
that shows like the regular income, and then it
Mhm.
shows the dip for
Mhm.
entrepreneurship. I drew that graph when I was in my darkest place, just to
Mm.
keep me doing what I was doing.
Mm.
I had to convince me that this thing is worth it, right? And I had to
Mm.
see the process, because they told me that you have to pay a price upfront and in full. And I was like, what does that really mean? So I had
Yeah.
to draw it out, right? And once I drew it out, I was like, okay, I could explain to someone, this is who I am. In fact, one of my friends actually called me once, and she was like, oh, I heard that you are struggling, that you borrow some money. I'm like, yeah. I said, but that's part of my entrepreneurial journey, so don't worry about it.
Mm.
I said,
Mm.
I appreciate you asking, but I'm
Mhm.
good because I'm on a journey.
Mm.
Only because I understood the process at this point. That makes sense.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
my point is, my faith actually helped me to really dig deep into myself to understand the process of success. And once I understood the process of success, it gave me confidence to keep going. In fact, if you hear me always say that word, you have to know the 3 steps. You have to know the process,
Mhm.
you have to accept the process, and then you have to do the process.
Yep. Know the process, accept the process, and do the process. Yeah. I'm going to make a note of that again because we often forget. Hmm. Wow. Doc, let's switch gears a little bit. I'm almost wrapping up, but this has been good. I hope I see people, a lot of comments coming through. They're happy. I mean, I've been sharing some of the comments. Thank you for all the comments, and for those who are still watching. I hope this is enlightening. I hope this is resonating with you as well, and I hope that it can help you in your own wealthy journey. Right? There's a place called there, but there never really quite exists. You just have to keep moving because it's always a journey. You know, Doc, if you could mentor your younger self at the moment you are about to quit or in your darkest place, what would you say?
I think, for me, venturing into something very new, I wish I believed that I could actually win faster. That makes sense. I also doubted the possibility that was going to happen. So it took me a long time to actually commit. I studied something for 4 years that I could do in 1 week, right? Because I was like, hey, I'm cool. I'm a scientist. I make good money, right?
Mhm.
I have a good
Mhm.
lifestyle. So it took me a while to actually understand what could have taken me a short amount of time to understand. And it took
Mhm.
me a long time to make the commitment, right? From the dreaming to the deciding.
Mhm.
Once I decided, things happened fast. But it took me 4 years just to decide.
Mhm.
So every time I ask myself, what if I believed the first year and I did everything I was supposed to do? You think about compounding, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
If right now I have about 10,000 plus agents on my team, if I compounded at double, in 1 year it will be 20,000.
Yeah.
So think about me starting and believing it from year one. What do you think 4 years of compounding can do?
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Powerful. Powerful. I like what this lady Eokon said, that there's no prayer as powerful as the prayer of agreement, especially that of a married couple. That's amazing. In fact, when you were saying that, I had something that I wanted to ask, because I'm going to work with you so I can bring the queen of the castle for us to have a conversation like this. Because when you say that, um, again, I'm confident that every time it did not go as maybe you hoped. Highlight for us one of those moments where maybe the frustration was not even from you, but the frustration was from her. And how did you manage the expectation? Because at some point, if what she's saying and communicating to you is like you don't have any recourse or anything to even counter, how did you manage that?
It's so funny, because my wife is so amazing. Um, I will remember each time I'll go out of the house. So at some point, it was like things were like really tight.
Mhm,
We owed about over $50,000 in fees for the kids' school.
mhm,
We're back on the mortgage, all of that stuff. And so then I'll go out. So I'm coming back. She's like, "Okay, did you close?" I'll be like, "Please give me my food first," right? Because I didn't close Jack, but I needed to eat. But
mhm,
what is more inspiring for me is what she said when I came back. So I'm out Kingsley the whole day. I'm like tired, right? So I come back,
mhm.
right? I eat, then I go to bed because I'm
Yeah,
tired.
yeah,
But she's restless. She can't sleep. She knows we can't pay the bills. She's
yeah.
checking everything and she's sitting there, going to the store. The cats are bouncing.
Mhm,
And I come and then I fall asleep.
mm.
And I remember when she was talking about the story, and she said, I came out sleeping so peacefully. She's looking at me, and she's like,
Mm.
"Should I kill him?"
Oh my. Mm.
So when
Mm.
I hear stuff like that, I'm like, "Oh my goodness, what did I do?"
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, yeah,
But I'm so glad that she stuck with me because most women will be like, gone.
yeah, yeah. Indeed, most people would have been gone a long time. Well, Mama Adele, if you're listening or you're watching, thank you for not giving up. Thank you for not giving up, and I hope you can continue to smile as long as you can. For now, you are for sure reaping the harvest. Um, Doc, what mindset shift do most professionals and immigrants need to make to build lasting wealth? Because all of this, again, is to highlight some of the things you've gone through for us
Yeah.
all who are immigrants to see what is possible and to perhaps tap into the mindset that is necessary to win, right? So, what are your
Well,
thoughts around that?
the truth is that you cannot make money you haven't worked for. They can't pay you money you didn't earn.
Mm,
That makes sense. So
mm,
sometimes it's almost like we feel like sometimes we have to play the lottery. You can win the lottery if you play.
mhm,
But most people want to win even when they don't play. They just think about it and they think they're going to win,
mm,
right? And
mhm,
so for me, if we just understand, it's not so much about the working. The one thing that I learned that was so very inspiring for me was when I learned about the wealth equation by Steve Siebold. And
mm,
that wealth equation says income, no, it says wealth equals opportunity to mental toughness,
mm,
right? And I
mhm,
was thinking to myself, coming from where I come from, I knew I was super mentally tough with all the challenges growing up, all of that stuff, going to Europe in the cold, all of that stuff, right?
mhm,
I knew I was mentally tough, like most immigrants.
mhm,
We come from a very difficult background to come to this country, right? So I'm like,
mhm,
hey, we're halfway to being wealthy. We're super mentally tough. Makes sense. And
mhm,
I'm like, so what? Why are we broke? And I discovered that the issue was the opportunities that we focus on. So what's the opportunity that you and I grew up knowing is like go to school and get a job. But then
Yeah.
I quickly realized that having a job will never make you wealthy. It doesn't matter how mentally tough you are, because it
Hmm.
does not have the ingredients of wealth. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Hmm.
So I was like, okay, I see an opportunity. How do I get my people to understand it? Because if they can get that part, boom, we're going to blow it out. Why? Because we only have half of the ingredients in play, which is the mental toughness.
Mm.
So one of the things that I had to do was to try to make sure people can see in a very simple terms the opportunity of the platform that I use, World Financial Group, right? So I
Hmm.
spend a lot of time. If you notice, Kingsley, if you look at my trainings like throughout, they're very simplistic. Why? I had to break it down so regular people can really start to get it. Sometimes we are so smart, we don't see stuff we don't see, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I developed a way of looking at stuff in very simplistic terms just to get people to understand. Because I know we work hard, we get all this stuff, but if you don't understand how the system works and how the things are, you kind of miss it.
Hmm.
When I see people winning big in the company right now, I understand why. Because now they were combining the knowledge or the opportunity, right,
Hmm.
with the mental toughness.
Okay. All right. Well, I have a doc. I hear you when you talk about mental toughness and that we have it. I I struggle now, even as an immigrant, to um, to take that fully. And here's why. And I'm going to pose something to you for us to let's brainstorm on this because we should or we do possess some degree of mental toughness. However, though, I find it interesting that even when an opportunity is exposed to us, we don't respond to it, and yet a lot of us are already working hard to attain that. What do you think could be going on there? Because here's why I say someone you're at the top of your career like you were, you're making good money, but something happened. Somehow you were willing to listen because there was a question you asked. I remember one of the things you shared with us about that time was that you used to have a financial advisor. And one of the questions you used to ask them was, how can you retire? And they couldn't answer that question for you. But having a conversation with a younger guy, how old was he at the time? Maybe 21, 22. Within a period of
I think
five,
he
ten
was
minutes.
28 at that time when I met him. Yeah, he was
Okay.
28.
So
Yeah,
within a period of 5, 10 minutes, he was able to quickly reveal to you or explain it to you in a way that made sense. And it became clear to you that this is why you could not retire.
correct.
And that curiosity probably catapulted you into investigating further why it is so.
Yeah,
Now, fast forward, you're having a conversation with someone who has left, flown all the way thousands of miles to come to another country because perhaps they left because maybe there was lack of opportunities or no opportunities, like you said. Wonderful. And now they're here and there's opportunities all over. And yet they can't perceive the opportunity. So they continue to pursue the path that they've always believed that that's the path of of success. So most of us we just want to go to school, we want to go get that degree. And we highly believe that hey, when we do that, then we will become successful. So we would graduate, we will celebrate, make a big party, you name it, spend all this money, and then we start working like crazy to pay back the loans, to pay back whatever we borrowed, even to make the parties and you name it. What is happening there? Because in my mind I'm like, if someone is mentally tough and you're seeing something that has been presented to you that could truly liberate you, because for me, the whole idea of making money is not just for the sake of making money. The whole idea is really all what we all are seeking after is freedom. And like you always often tell us, freedom on three levels. It could be freedom of location, freedom of time, and then freedom of money. you know so I'd like you to give me a little bit of your take, because this is something that is so burning for me, and I began recognizing how deep this is, and it is unfortunately sad that a lot of us, especially Christians, we miss it on so many levels because we have now taken a significantly religious path to diagnose our problems, and our myopic understanding of even scripture it doesn't even make it any better, right? So Doc, tell me, because you mentor a lot of people, myself included, and every now and then I was with you last week and I told you that I'm struggling, my head is aching, I'm still trying to figure out what's going on, right? I know that the issue is here, right? And yet I should be mentally tough, but I'm struggling here. But somehow you found a way to overcome that. Give me your thoughts on your perspective of what you think that is, where you think there could be some issues going on, and perhaps how you were able to overcome that hump.
Okay, that's a very deep question, Kingsley. Because I wonder to like, how is it you tell people something that seems so obvious and they still don't get it, right? People that are good at working hard and so on, but you tell them something that will change their life, they're like, "Well, I'm good," when they know they're not good, right?
Mhm.
So I think about the book Think and Grow Rich. The bottom line is, if you are not thinking, that's the reason why we do a lot of things that we do.
Mm,
And the challenge for me in this country is that a lot of times life is designed to keep you so busy you have no time to think.
mm,
Because every time I challenge people to think, they go like, just something, think about something as simple as banking, right? All of us
mm.
work every 2 weeks, they put their money in the bank and you don't think about it.
Yeah.
And then when I say, Kingsley, do you realize that when you give your money to the bank, you go take your money back on a credit card, they charge you more? You'd be like, what? Is that what they do? Because we're not even thinking. And it's like, shoot, I don't want to do that. Only now you realize what's going on. So I'm saying that what most of the things that we do is partly because we're not really thinking about it.
Mhm,
As soon as you start thinking, guess what? A lot of things are going to change. Like, seriously. That's why if you see me talk, I always ask a lot of questions because it
mhm,
triggers thinking. Once you think, you be like, oops, they give me 401k. And I'm like, hey, so the 401k has 1 out of 10 benefits. Would you
mhm,
take it if they explain it? You'd be like, oh, no, they wouldn't. I'm like, what question did you ask? Nada. Why? Because we don't know. Does
mhm.
that make sense? So I'm saying a lot of the stuff that we do is because we don't understand what is truly going on. The other
Yeah.
thing is that what most of us want to chase money.
Yeah.
Kingsley, if you think about it, the wealthiest people in the world never sought out to make money. They sought out to make impact.
Hmm,
And once you make impact, money is going to follow you. If you
hmm.
follow money, it runs very fast. Okay. So a lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to go make a lot of money. I want to work extra time. No overtime is going to make you a lot of money. It's not possible.
Yeah.
You have to learn how to leverage the system correctly. Right.
Mm,
So if you focus on impact, that's vision. You have a vision to make an impact, then
mhm,
money is going to follow you. That's the way it works. That's how I learned about it. That makes sense. In fact,
mm.
lately, I learned something called the
Ah,
3 eyes. Okay.
Doc, you just said something. You just said something that thank you for bringing that up. I think that's part of the problem, right? We want the provision before the vision,
Exactly.
and the vision must come first before the provision.
Absolutely true.
Mm,
We're looking for the gain without putting in the work. You're trying to
mm,
harvest when you haven't farmed. It doesn't work
yeah,
like that. No matter how good you are at harvesting, if you didn't plant, you have nothing to harvest.
yeah. Mm,
Right? So the 3 eyes, you talk about freedom. Freedom is independence, correct? So I
mhm,
learned this not too long ago. There was a lady saying, hey, when we hire people, we focus on 3 eyes. I'm like, what do you mean? She said, well, the first eye is that what if you want to be independent, which means you want freedom,
mhm,
you have to make income. But to make income, you have to make impact.
mm,
So if you look
mm,
at Jeff Bezos, he sought out to do what? To create a system where
mhm,
anybody could get any book in his shop. That's what he wanted to do. So life becomes easier,
mhm,
right? Bill Gates
mhm,
wanted to what help people with. I'm just saying everybody that's truly wealthy sought out to what make an impact.
mhm,
In my businesses right now, what I gave my vision, four things. Number one, I say what I want to help add $1 trillion worth to our community. That's number one. Number two, I need about 1 million licensed financial professionals to make that possible.
Mhm.
Number three, I want to make sure that every child in our society is exposed to the most powerful wealth tool that exists in this country.
Mhm.
And lastly, I want to help make sure that what 10% of the African continent is financially free. That's impact that I'm very confident that when it happens, I have no doubt it's going to make me very wealthy, but I'm not looking for the wealth.
Mhm.
I truly want to make the impact. And I think if we shift our mindset from trying to make money
Mhm.
to making impact, then
Yeah.
guess what? Income is naturally going to follow. And when income follows, boom, independence is going to come naturally.
Mm. Independence. So independence is the last one. Okay. Wonderful. Wow. Doc, I have one final question. Hopefully, this will be my final question, and then we'll wrap it up. You've been gracious. You've been gracious, and I really appreciate your time, making the time to sit down with me for us to do this. Um, what do you believe is the real measure of a man's legacy?
See, Kingsley, all of us desire to live as long as we can. Is that true?
Mhm. A lot of us want to go to heaven, but we don't want to die.
Exactly. Now, I think back, right? Martin Luther King, he died at what age?
I think he died at the age of, age- wow, he wasn't up to, I don't think he even hit 50.
No, he did not. I don't believe so.
Yeah, well,
Jesus
45,
died at what age?
about 33.
So how long was his ministry?
It was 3 years.
So how did he create lasting impact?
Hmm. He imparted people around him,
Yeah,
and he imparted what he knew in the lives of some
each of
people.
them.
Yeah.
Yes. And when he left, he gave them a mission, a commission, or you want to call it,
Mhm.
to go do the same thing that he did.
Yeah.
And I'm going to put this in perspective. You remember one of our mentors said, recently said, the willingness to do the same simple thing
Mhm.
over and over is going to make a millionaire.
Mhm.
What did Jesus teach? He said, wash each other's feet just like I wash yours, right?
Mhm.
Pray for each other. Love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
Are those like crazy things to do?
Yeah.
No, they're not.
Yeah.
But do you realize that those simple things actually have transformed the world?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm saying that in a way, we think too much about what impact we can make. But if we just empower each other to do the little things, there's really, frankly, nothing big that we get to do. It's just a collection of small things.
Yeah. Hmm. Wow. Doc, this has been one heck of a moment. And I really want to thank you um, for not just giving us answers, but allowing us into the process. Um, your humanity, the wrestles, the revelations. And to everyone watching, here's the truth. Um, my mentor here, you've seen, he's often said this. The truth is, indeed, success leaves clues. It does. But it only becomes transformation when we stop consuming and start reflecting. So before you scroll away, I want to leave you with a few questions to sit with. And I wrote it down because I want to ask it the way I wrote it down. Okay. If you're on, this is for you. What part of his story did you feel in your spirit and why? That's the first question. Second question, what decision have you been avoiding because of comfort or fear? And third question, what shift mentally, spiritually, or financially do you need to make starting now? Because here's the thing, you are not waiting for the right opportunity. You are being invited to become the right person. So thank you again for joining us. If this blessed you, then share it, replay it, and most importantly, act on it. The journey of financial freedom and legacy doesn't start with a product. It starts with a decision. And Dr. Quende just showed us and exposed to us how he made that decision. I hope you've had a great evening. God bless you. And until next time, have a great weekend. Doc, any last words for the audience before we call it a night?
Yeah, Kingsley, I truly want to thank you. This is probably one of the most in-depth uh, discussions that I think I've had in a while. This is also partly why I told you not to give me the questions beforehand, because I wanted it to be real, right? So
Mhm.
I know I might have shared something that I'm not shared before, but my story is still exactly the same.
Mhm.
And I hope that somebody got inspired today, right? To make the
Yeah.
decision that they have avoided to make. And I love those three questions that you ask at the end, right? Like I said, most of us do things that we do because we don't think. So once you start thinking, guess what? A lot is going to change if you just take action. So
Yeah.
if you're listening today, please don't just listen, act on something that you learned. Just one thing, that's all you need to do. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. And with that, have a great evening. This has been Kingsley Ekinde again with Discovery Hour. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so because every week I bring new content to share with my community and the people I care about to help us all gain that level of economic empowerment so we can actually bring the impact that we need to bring to our immediate environment and beyond. Just like Jesus told his disciples, go to Jerusalem and Galilee and to the uttermost parts of the earth. You always have to start from home. Charity begins at home. We have to impact our immediate environment. Then we can take it beyond that. Have a great evening. And remember this, I never close any broadcast or any discussion without saying this. With all of your getting, get understanding. Have a great night.